If you thought you'd already seen Meghan Markle's dirtiest secrets dragged into the light, think again, because what just detonated in London makes every interview, every Netflix tear, every carefully scripted smile look like a rehearsal for a lie far bigger than anyone imagined. The Supreme Court in London has never witnessed anything like this. Forget the Netflix documentaries. It's really hard to look back on it now and go, what on earth happened? That single question, what on earth happened, is exactly what the world is asking now. Because the fairy tale didn't just crack, it imploded. This wasn't about paparazzi. This wasn't about racism. This wasn't even about privacy. This was about a contract, a marriage built on clauses, exit strategies, and legal landmines so explosive that when Tom Bower finally said the words out loud, the entire courtroom froze like someone had pulled the oxygen out of the air. Courtroom number 7, January 2026. London choking under gray skies and even heavier secrets. Journalists packed shoulder to shoulder, not whispering, not blinking, because everyone knew once Tom Bower walked in, nobody was leaving untouched. This man doesn't speculate. He ends people. Billionaires, politicians, media titans, every single one thought they were untouchable until Bower opened his files. And this time, his target wasn't just Meghan Markle. It was Prince Harry's entire life. Harry sat there rigid, hands locked together like he was bracing for impact. The same man who once stormed out of palaces for love now looked hollowed out, like something had already died behind his eyes. Meghan, perfect posture, camera-ready chin. But her hands, those hands told the real story, clenched so hard around her bag that her knuckles went ghost white. That's when Bower dropped the first grenade. Not a love story, not a betrayal. A divorce contract, one so carefully constructed it didn't just end a marriage, it set the stage for the next one. Trevor Ingleson, a name Meghan worked very hard to erase from the narrative. Bower didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His words landed like cold steel as he explained that Meghan's first marriage didn't end in heartbreak, it ended in paperwork, clauses, contingencies, and what he called forward-looking protections. Hollywood language, legal language, the kind of language used when someone is planning 10 moves ahead. According to sworn testimony, Meghan didn't just walk away from Trevor. She walked away with leverage, agreements that restricted speech, agreements that structured silence, agreements that made sure her past could never fully chase her into the future unless she lost control of the story. And here's where the room shifted, because Bower wasn't talking about the past. He was talking about how that same contract mentality followed Meghan straight into the royal family. Harry's breathing changed. People noticed. Reporters leaned forward as Bower laid out what he called a pattern: marriages treated not as unions but as vehicles, relationships with expiration dates, love wrapped in legal armor. Then came the phrase that made Meghan snap to her feet: Operation Cuckoo. A term used, according to Bower, by palace insiders who noticed something deeply unsettling. Meghan didn't just enter the royal nest, she replaced its rules. He detailed how Harry's life accelerated unnaturally fast. Engagement rushed, wedding rushed, isolation intensified, legal walls built, contracts rewritten, advisors sidelined. Every traditional safeguard the monarchy relies on quietly removed. And at the center of it all, a woman who had already perfected the art of the exit. Bower revealed that Harry never saw the full scope of Meghan's prior divorce agreement, only summaries, sanitized versions, nothing that hinted at how meticulously she prepared for endings before beginnings were even secure. That's when the courtroom doors slammed open. Meghan left. No statement, no glare, no defiant pose, just tears, panic, and a woman realizing her past was no longer buried, it was testifying under oath. Harry didn't follow. He couldn't, because what Bower said next didn't just ruin a marriage, it annihilated Harry's understanding of his own role in it. Bower described Harry not as a co-conspirator, but as a liability Meghan needed to manage. A prince too emotional, too reactive, too traumatized to question timelines or paperwork. A man who trusted love more than documents, and paid for it. The so-called Megxit, Bower claimed, wasn't an escape from racism. It was the activation of an exit clause. The moment the palace began pushing back, asking questions, demanding transparency, tightening legal oversight, Meghan executed the same move she'd rehearsed years earlier. Control the narrative, frame the villains, leave first, sue later. And Harry? He burned every bridge behind him thinking he was protecting his family, never realizing he might have been protecting a strategy. Bower looked directly at him, not cruelly, almost with pity. pity. He explained that Harry signed agreements he didn't fully understand, accepted legal frameworks written by people who did not serve his interests, walked away from royal protection while binding himself to private contracts that left him exposed, isolated, and financially dependent on the very brand built around his suffering. This wasn't romance. It was corporate structuring disguised as love. The courtroom buzzed as Bauer connected the final dots: how Meghan's divorce from Trevor wasn't a failure, but a blueprint; how silence was purchased; how narratives were pre-written; how contingency plans were stacked like dominoes, waiting for the right push. And Harry? By the time he realized the rules of the game, the contract was already signed. His reputation shredded, his family fractured, his identity reduced to a talking point in interviews he didn't control. Bauer didn't call Meghan evil. He called her prepared. And in that distinction lies the real devastation. Because preparation beats love every time. Harry sat motionless as the weight of it landed, not just that his marriage might be failing, but that it may have been engineered to end the moment it stopped serving its purpose. The courtroom adjourned in chaos. Phones exploded. Headlines drafted themselves. And somewhere between London and Montecito, a prince realized he wasn't the hero of the story. He was the clause that backfired. The silence after Meghan walked out of that courtroom was louder than any scream she'd ever delivered on camera. Harry stayed seated. That alone told the world everything. Because if this were just another media hit job, if this were just another tabloid fantasy, he would have followed her. He always did. He always rushed to shield her, defend her, burn bridges in her name. But this time, he didn't move. He stared straight ahead like a man replaying his entire life in reverse, finally noticing the moments that never made sense. The rushed engagement, the urgency, the contracts no one explained to him slowly enough. Tom Bauer let the silence breathe before delivering the detail that turned speculation into something far darker. He explained that Meghan's divorce from Trevor wasn't just clean, it was strategic. Clauses about intellectual property, clauses about public narrative ownership, clauses that ensured she controlled how the story ended even years later. Not the studios, not the press, not the man she married. Then Bauer asked a question that sliced through the room. Why would someone who hated control suddenly marry into the most controlled institution on earth unless they believed they could outmaneuver it? That's when the phrase dirty divorce contract stopped sounding like gossip and started sounding like a warning label. According to testimony, Harry was never meant to understand the full legal architecture of his marriage. Not because he was stupid, but because he was emotional, vulnerable, desperate to protect someone he believed had been hunted the same way his mother was. That vulnerability became the entry point. Bauer described how Meghan's legal team, not palace lawyers, drafted critical frameworks around finances, privacy, future media rights, and exit conditions. Harry signed because he trusted. He signed because love felt safer than suspicion. He signed because questioning her felt like betraying her. And the moment he signed, the balance of power shifted permanently. By the time cracks began forming, disagreements with staff, tension with William, concerns raised quietly behind palace doors, the escape hatch was already built. California wasn't a coincidence. Netflix wasn't a coincidence. The lawsuits weren't reactions, they were activations. Bauer dismantled the narrative that Megxit was spontaneous. He called it the cleanest exit strategy I've ever seen from a public institution. Harry didn't leave with nothing. He left with debt, emotional, reputational, and psychological. The palace, according to Bauer, saw the danger far too late. By the time advisors raised alarms, Harry was already legally isolated. No royal counsel, no institutional protection, bound instead to private contracts that favored optics over legacy. And that's when the story turned tragic. Because Bauer made it painfully clear, Harry wasn't the villain. He was the mark. A prince raised on duty, loyalty, and emotion dropped into a world of Hollywood negotiations and legal warfare without the armor to survive it. He thought he was fighting the press. In reality, he was fighting contracts written years before he ever entered the picture. Then came the detail that broke whatever composure he had left. Bauer stated that the same legal mindset used in Meghan's first divorce shaped how Archie's life was managed: privacy demands, medical opacity, geographic distance, jurisdictional shielding, not random choices. Calculated ones. The room didn't gasp. It went still. Because suddenly the obsession with control wasn't about trauma, it was about containment. Harry's face collapsed in on itself as if someone had finally said the thought he'd been pushing down for years, that the life he believed he was protecting had been structured long before he understood the rules. Bauer didn't accuse Meghan of hating Harry. He accused her of outgrowing him the moment he stopped being useful. And that's what made this revelation so devastating. This wasn't a scandal built on rage or betrayal. No, it was built on indifference, on a woman who didn't need to destroy Harry, just outmaneuver him. Outside the courtroom, reporters screamed questions into the cold London air. Why hasn't Meghan sued? Why hasn't Harry spoken? Why hasn't anyone denied this? Because denial would require opening contracts, and contracts tell the truth when people won't. Bauer ended his testimony with a sentence that landed like a gravestone. This marriage didn't fail. It concluded. That single word, concluded, reframed everything. The Oprah tears, the Netflix confessions, the endless blame, all of it suddenly looked like aftermath. Harry left the courtroom alone. No wife, no statement, no destination anyone could name. Sources later described him as unreachable, not angry, not explosive, just empty. A man realizing that the greatest sacrifice of his life may not have been for love, but for a plan that never included him long term. And Meghan, she disappeared into silence. No lawsuit, no denials, no dramatic rebuttal, only distance. In Hollywood, silence after an accusation this big isn't innocence, it's calculation. Because once you sue, discovery begins. And discovery doesn't care about image. It cares about ink, signatures, timelines, and who benefited. The world now understands something chilling. Harry didn't lose his family because he chose Meghan. He lost his family because he underestimated contracts. What happens next isn't a divorce headline. It's a reckoning. Legal experts are already questioning whether Harry even has leverage left, whether his finances, his image, and his future are still his own, or assets tied to agreements he never fully read. The fairy tale didn't end with a kiss or a curse. It ended with paperwork. And for the first time, the prince who thought he escaped the system is realizing the system followed him, just wearing a different face. This story isn't over. It's only just finished pretending to be a love story.